I never imagined that my marriage, the one everyone envied, would end with a manila envelope slid across a table. 15 years of love, loyalty, and sacrifice collapsed in that single moment under the weight of printed truth. My name is Jennifer Carter. I'm 39 years old, mother of 3, and until recently, I believed I was married to a good man. A respected heart surgeon, a father, a husband, the love of my life. It's strange, isn't it? How betrayal doesn't always come crashing in like thunder. Sometimes it creeps in quietly, settling into the corners of your home long before you ever notice the rot. That morning began like any other. I was folding laundry in our walk-in closet, humming to the rhythm of the washing machine when I reached for William's gym bag. He'd said he was on call the night before another emergency surgery. The bag was half-zipped, carelessly shoved behind his polished shoes. When I tugged it open, a shirt spilled out, wrinkled and faintly scented of cologne that wasn't his usual brand. And on the collar, smeared like an artist's careless brushstroke, was a shade of red I didn't own. For a long moment I couldn't breathe. I remember staring at that stain under the soft glow of the closet light, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. It wasn't blood. I knew it instantly. It was lipstick, crimson bright, defiant, a signature left by another woman. In that moment, time slowed. 15 years of memories, anniversaries, children's birthdays, quiet dinners after his long shifts collapsed into one single blinding realization: he had someone else. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just folded the shirt, placed it gently back into the bag, and closed the zipper as if sealing away the life I thought I had. That's how betrayal starts, not with fury, but with silence. William Carter was adored by everyone who knew him. The hospital board praised his skill, patience, thanked him in Christmas cards, and colleagues toasted him at every gala. I used to stand beside him at those events, smiling for photographs, my hand resting on his arm, while he told anyone who'd listen that he couldn't have done it without me. She's the reason for everything, he'd say, voice rich with practiced warmth. Jennifer keeps me grounded. They'd all smile, impressed by his devotion. I'd blush because I wanted to believe it. Behind that perfect image, our marriage had been slowly eroding. I used to tell myself it was the stress of his job. He worked 18-hour days, sometimes sleeping in his office. When he stopped reaching for my hand at night, I convinced myself it was exhaustion. When he stopped kissing me goodbye in the mornings, I told myself he was distracted. When he started spending weekends golfing with colleagues, I chose to trust him because that's what good wives do. My sister warned me once in that blunt tone only sisters have. Men in power change Jen. They start believing they deserve more. I'd laughed it off. Not William. He's not like that. But he was. The real unraveling began the week of our 15th anniversary. I'd planned a surprise trip to Napa Valley, the same vineyard where we'd spent our honeymoon. I imagined us walking hand in hand through the vineyards, laughing like we used to. That morning, as I was syncing our calendars, I saw his phone on the kitchen counter, face up, unlocked. I hesitated. I'd never gone through his phone before. But something, maybe the lipstick stain still haunting me, pushed me over the edge. The message appeared before I even touched the screen. Dr. Rebecca Harrington, last night was perfect. I can still feel you. When are you telling her? My vision blurred. I opened the thread. There were hundreds of messages. Photos, secrets, jokes about me. He called me the household manager. She called me the oblivious wife. I remember my hands shaking as I scrolled, reading months of intimacy written in words I'd never heard from him anymore. When he came down for breakfast, I poured his coffee, kissed his cheek, and watched him walk out the door. Then I collapsed against the counter and vomited until my stomach ached. That night, after the kids were asleep, I confronted him. My voice was so calm it frightened me. "Are you sleeping with Rebecca Harrington?" He didn't flinch. He just unbuckled his watch, placed it neatly on the nightstand, and said yes. No excuses, no remorse. Just a surgical incision straight through my heart. "How long?" "Does it matter?" he said. "I want a divorce." A divorce. Just like that, like a surgeon cutting away what no longer served him. I should have screamed, thrown something, but I just stood there numb. He looked around our bedroom, the same one where we'd planned our future, mourned our miscarriages, comforted our children after nightmares, and said almost with disdain, "I've outgrown this life, Jennifer. I'm 45. If I'm going to start over, it has to be now." "Start over," I whispered. "We built everything together. He laughed a cold, joyless sound. I save lives. What do you do? Bake cookies, host PTA meetings. I need more than this. It's strange how quickly love can turn into contempt. That night, he slept in the guest room. By morning, he was gone. On the kitchen counter next to his empty coffee mug was a business card, his lawyer's. I called mine that afternoon. Her name was Patricia Winters, a small woman with sharp eyes and the calm of someone who's seen too many messy divorces. She told me something I'll never forget: document everything, especially the finances. So I did. I went through every drawer, every file, every account. What I found made the affair look almost trivial. There were monthly transfers, 5,000, 7,000, sometimes 10, to something called Riverside Holdings. No receipts, no explanations. $250,000 gone in 2 years. When I showed the records to Patricia, she frowned. This isn't about hiding from you. This looks coordinated, long-term. That's when a name surfaced: Dr. Nathan Brooks. He'd once worked with William at Ashford Medical Center but had left abruptly 3 years ago. When I tracked him down and called, he said something that chilled me. "I've been expecting your call, Mrs. Carter. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our towns." He looked older, weary, and when he spoke, the world I knew dissolved all over again. He told me the fertility clinic at Ashford had a problem. Records falsified, specimens switched, results manipulated. He had discovered it while reviewing IVF reports. The director, Dr. Mercer, had been substituting samples to boost the clinic's success rate, and William knew. More than knew, Dr. Brooks said quietly. He authorized it. I felt my pulse hammer in my throat. That's impossible. We went through 5 IVF rounds there. William would never, but he slid a flash drive across the table. His signature's on the authorizations, including yours. I didn't understand until he said the words that froze me. Your husband has a genetic heart condition. It's mild but hereditary. He couldn't risk passing it on. He made sure his sperm was never used in your treatments. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. So, my children are not biologically his. I went home that night and sat in the dark until morning. The walls felt like they were closing in. 15 years of marriage built on a lie so profound it made me question who I even was. But I needed proof. Not suspicion, not conjecture. Proof. So I sent DNA samples: hair from the twins' brushes, a strand from Emma's, and one of William's combs. 2 weeks later, the email arrived. Paternity probability 0%. That line burned into my mind like fire. I printed 3 copies. One for my lawyer, one for a safety deposit box, and one I sealed in a cream envelope with the Ashford Medical Center logo. That was the beginning of my transformation from the obedient wife into something sharper, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. The day William thought he'd won, the day he signed the divorce papers, I smiled, shook his hand, and whispered, "Congratulations on your freedom." He didn't notice the envelope I slid across the table, not yet. But soon he would, because this time the scalpel was in my hand. He didn't open the envelope that day. He tucked it into his briefcase with the absent-minded confidence of a man who believed he was untouchable. Watching him walk away, I realized that the man I had loved for half my life had never really seen me, not as a partner, not even as a person. I had been a supporting character in his carefully curated story. But the script had changed now, and for the first time I was holding the pen. The next weeks were an endless performance. I played the role of the grieving, cooperative wife, quiet, dignified, predictable. The one everyone would sympathize with but never suspect of plotting revenge. That facade became my armor. I attended school events with a smile, made polite small talk at the grocery store, and nodded when people offered pity. "He's a good man," they'd say softly, as if comforting a widow. "You'll get through this." I'd smile. I already am. William had no idea that every day I was quietly dismantling the empire he'd built. Patricia, my lawyer, helped me gather everything: financial statements, hospital records, tax filings. The deeper we dug, the darker it became. There were shell companies linked to Riverside Holdings, offshore accounts hidden under fake medical research entities, and luxury expenses disguised as clinical travel. He had built an entire shadow network, and I intended to pull every thread until it unraveled around him. But betrayal has a way of mutating. It doesn't just destroy love. It rewires your sense of reality. Every memory began to feel tainted. I'd look at old photographs of our wedding, of William holding our newborn twins, and I'd feel sick. Was he already lying to me then? Did he smile at me, knowing that those babies weren't biologically his? I'd spent years thinking I was the lucky one, the woman whose husband adored her, who had the perfect home, the perfect children, the perfect life. But perfection, I was learning, was often just the prettiest mask for deceit. One evening after the kids were asleep, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened the flash drive Dr. Brooks had given me. There it was, line after line of falsified documents, each signed by William Carter. My name appeared several times. Specimen replacement authorized due to genetic risk. That sterile phrase sliced through me like glass. I stared at it for so long that the words began to blur. My hands trembled and I whispered to the empty room. Who were we then? The truth was unbearable, and yet it freed me. For years I had lived in a world defined by William's needs, his success, his reputation. My identity had been an extension of his. But this truth, horrific as it was, stripped away the illusion. I was no longer William's wife. I was simply Jennifer, betrayed, broken, and suddenly completely awake. I began reaching out to others who had undergone fertility treatments at Ashford. I found 5 women willing to talk. Each one had a different story. Miraculous conceptions, failed procedures suddenly reversed. But there were patterns, small inconsistencies in dates and medical notes. Then I met Diane Fletcher, a former nurse who had worked at the clinic. We met in her small, cluttered apartment filled with boxes of old files and faintly yellowed papers. I kept everything she said quietly. They thought I shredded it all when I left, but I couldn't. Her hand shook as she handed me a worn leather notebook filled with entries. My name was there, Jennifer Carter. The note beside it read, "Special instruction from Dr. Carter, specimen replacement approved. No donor identification recorded." For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then Diane whispered, "I tried to report it. The hospital, the ethics board, even the police. Every time it disappeared. He's protected, Mrs. Carter. Your husband has powerful friends." Powerful. That word used to comfort me. Now it made my skin crawl. I left her apartment with photos of every page and a business card she pressed into my palm before I left. Agent Michael Dawson, Medical Ethics Investigation Unit. Tell him Diane sent you. I met Dawson a week later in a dimly lit government office that smelled faintly of old coffee and disinfectant. He was sharp, methodical, and far too calm for what I was about to tell him. As I laid out the documents, he listened silently, taking notes. When I finished, he leaned back and said, "Mrs. Carter, this could be the missing piece. We've been building a case against Ashford for almost 2 years, but couldn't link the internal fraud to the clinic director or your husband. What you have changes that." My pulse raced. So what happens now? We gather evidence, quietly. If we move too soon, they'll bury everything. We'll need more financial records, internal emails, witness testimony. I nodded. You'll have it. From that day on, my life became a dual existence. By day, I was the amicable, soon-to-be ex-wife, attending mediation meetings and smiling for the sake of the children. By night, I was a ghost in my own home, cataloging files, photographing documents, and collecting every trace of William's deceit. He grew confident, smug even. He began showing up to school events with Rebecca, her hand possessively on his arm, her smile rehearsed and victorious. Parents whispered. Some pitied me. Others looked almost relieved that the cracks in the perfect Carter marriage were finally visible. One afternoon, after a custody meeting, William smirked as he leaned against his car. "You're being surprisingly reasonable, Jennifer. I expected tears, drama, maybe some public scene." I met his gaze evenly. "The children come first. That's all that matters." He smiled like a man who believed he'd won. But I wasn't done yet. When you've been silenced long enough, your voice, once it returns, can be the most powerful weapon you own. I used mine carefully. Every time William called, every conversation during custody exchanges, I recorded them. I needed his arrogance, his entitlement on tape. Then one day, I found the perfect opportunity. He was picking up the kids for the weekend, distracted, scrolling through his phone. "The twins really do have your eyes," I said softly, pretending to smile. He glanced up, half listening. "Good genes. Do you ever wonder if they inherited your heart condition?" His head snapped up. For the first time, real fear flickered in his eyes. What are you talking about? Dr. Brooks mentioned hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. He scowled. Brooks should learn to keep his mouth shut. It's mild, nothing to worry about. So you had them tested. Without me, I'm their father, he said flatly. I made a medical decision. That single exchange captured clearly on my phone was the final piece Agent Dawson needed, a recorded admission confirming not only his deception, but his ongoing pretense of biological connection. From there, everything began to move quickly. Dawson's team built a case cross-referencing Diane's records with the clinic's financial trail. Each discovery painted the same picture: a network of greed, deceit, and ethical violations that had destroyed families. And through it all, I waited, calmly, patiently, until the perfect moment arrived. The Ashford Medical Center's annual gala was approaching, an opulent event where William was to receive the Physician of the Year award for his contributions to cardiac surgery and unwavering ethical standards. The irony wasn't lost on me. 2 nights before this gala, I met privately with the hospital board chair, Dr. Helena Winters. I handed her copies of the DNA test, the bank transfers, the signed authorizations. Her face turned pale. "My God," she whispered. "Do you realize what this means?" "I do," I said. "But I need one thing from you. Don't suspend him yet. Let him stand on that stage. Let everyone see who he really is." The board convened a confidential session before the gala. Agent Dawson would be present, ready to act once William publicly accepted his award. And I would be there front row. That night, as I laid out my black gown and the cream envelope containing the original DNA report, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't fragile anymore. The softness that once defined me had hardened into quiet strength. My eyes looked different, clearer, colder, certain. Tomorrow I would watch him fall. The night of the gala arrived draped in irony and thunderclouds. Rain threatened, but the storm held off as if the universe itself was waiting for the right moment to strike. I arrived alone, wearing the same black dress William once called too serious for a surgeon's wife. My hair was swept up my earrings. His anniversary gift years ago caught the light as I stepped into the ballroom of the Ashford Grand. It was a scene I'd lived 100 times: the shimmer of champagne glasses, the hum of polite laughter, the faint scent of expensive perfume and polished marble. But tonight every sound seemed sharper, every face painted in the artificial glow of hypocrisy. I spotted him instantly. William stood near the stage, surrounded by hospital executives and board members, his posture confident, his smile effortless. Rebecca hovered beside him in a crimson dress, her hand resting lightly on his arm. The same shade of lipstick that had once stained his shirt now glowed proudly on her mouth. He looked happy, free, triumphant. I felt nothing, no tears, no heartbreak, just a strange, deep calm. I had already buried the man I thought he was. When our eyes met across the room, he smiled faintly, a condescending expression that said, "You shouldn't have come, Jennifer." I smiled back, a polite, practiced curve of the lips that hid the storm beneath. The gala unfolded with rehearsed perfection. Speeches about medical excellence, applause for innovation, gratitude for unwavering integrity. Words that once would have filled me with pride now felt hollow. Then the chairwoman, Dr. Helena Winters, stepped to the microphone. Tonight, she announced, we honor a man whose dedication and leadership have shaped this institution. Please join me in congratulating Dr. William Carter, Physician of the Year. The audience rose in applause. Cameras flashed. William ascended the stage, Rebecca beaming beside him. For a fleeting moment, I thought about the years I'd stood in her place, hand in hand with him, believing in the illusion. He took the microphone. Medicine, he began, is not just science. It's trust. A sacred bond between doctor and patient. Ethics, honesty, these are the pillars that hold our profession together. His voice was smooth, practiced. The crowd nodded, captivated. And in that moment, I understood the depth of his deceit, not just as a husband, but as a man who wore virtue like armor, weaponizing it to hide his sins. But tonight that armor would crack. I watched as Agent Dawson slipped quietly through the side entrance, joining Dr. Winters and a handful of board members near the back of the hall. They exchanged subtle nods. The plan was in motion. After the applause died down, William and Rebecca left together for the post-gala dinner at Vincenzo's, the same restaurant where he'd proposed to me 15 years earlier. The same table by the window. The same bottle of wine he used to say tasted like love. I waited 15 minutes before following. When I arrived, the maitre d' greeted me warmly. Mrs. Carter. What a surprise. Dr. Carter mentioned you might join them. I smiled. Of course. He forgot to tell me what time. He led me straight to their table. There they were, William basking in post-victory glow, and Rebecca sipping her wine, her manicured fingers tracing the rim of her glass. The moment they saw me, the air shifted. Jennifer, William said, rising slightly, his tone a practiced blend of irritation and charm. This is unexpected. Is it? I asked softly, setting my clutch on the table. You told the maitre d' I might come. His smile flickered. A courtesy mention. Rebecca began to stand. Perhaps I should stay? I interrupted, gently meeting her eyes. You've earned your place at this table. Her face paled. Something in my tone must have told her this wasn't a social visit. Jennifer, William said sharply, lowering his voice. If this is about the divorce, it's neither the time nor the place. Oh, I agree. I pulled the cream-colored envelope from my clutch and placed it neatly on the tablecloth between us. But this isn't about the divorce. His gaze dropped to the envelope, confusion flickering. What is this? Proof, I said simply, of who you really are. Rebecca's brow furrowed. William. He hesitated before tearing the envelope open. Inside lay the DNA test results. I watched his expression transform, first confusion, then disbelief, then dawning horror. This can't be real, he whispered. It's real, I said quietly. You ensured your sperm was never used during our IVF treatments. You falsified medical records. You built a family out of lies, William. Rebecca's hand trembled as she set down her glass. What is she talking about? He turned to her, desperate. Nothing. She's unstable. She's trying to… Then explain, I interrupted. Explain why Dr. Nathan Brooks has your signed authorizations. Explain the falsified reports, the hidden accounts, the clinic nurse who kept copies of everything. Explain Riverside Holdings, William. He froze. The name hit him like a slap. I don't know what you think you… Before he could finish, I gestured toward the restaurant entrance. Dr. Winters, Agent Dawson, and 2 uniformed officers stood there watching. The entire restaurant seemed to fall silent, forks suspended mid-air, conversations dying mid-sentence. William's face drained of color. Jennifer, what did you do? I told the truth, I said softly. Something you were never capable of. Agent Dawson stepped forward, his badge flashing under the soft lighting. Dr. William Carter, you are under arrest for medical fraud, financial crimes, and ethical violations under the Medical Practice Act. You have the right to remain silent. Gasps rippled through the restaurant. William's body stiffened as the officers cuffed him. His gaze darted between me and Rebecca, rage and disbelief warring in his eyes. You vindictive… Careful, I murmured. Your patients might still be watching. Rebecca sat frozen, her face pale as parchment. She whispered, I didn't know. About the children. I swear I didn't. I nodded. I believe you. But you should know your mother deserved justice too. Her eyes widened in shock. She understood then that I knew everything: her mother's death on William's operating table, the cover-up, the falsified records. Her affair with him had started as revenge, just like mine ended with it. As they led him past me, our eyes met one final time. For the first time since I'd known him, there was no arrogance, only fear. I leaned closer, my voice barely a whisper. 15 years, William. That's how long it took you to build your life. It took me 3 months to destroy it. He didn't answer. The door closed behind him and the storm outside finally broke. Rain pounded against the restaurant windows, blurring the city lights into streaks of silver. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the empty chair where he'd been. It was over. But closure doesn't arrive with handcuffs. It comes in quiet waves long after the noise fades. In the weeks that followed, the story exploded across every news outlet. Renowned surgeon arrested in fertility scandal. Families demand answers. Hospital shuts down Ashford reproductive program. The court froze his accounts. His medical license was suspended. Dozens of families came forward demanding truth about their children's origins. Through it all, I moved like a ghost through the wreckage, answering questions, providing statements, shielding my children from the headlines. One afternoon, Dr. Brooks visited my home. The hospital's forming an ethics committee to rebuild from the scandal, he said. They want me to chair it. I suggested your name as co-chair. I blinked. Me. You were the one who exposed this, Jennifer. You have more moral authority than anyone left in that place. For the first time in months, I felt something unfamiliar pride. Months passed. The dust began to settle. I saw Rebecca once more at a small cafe far from the city. We sat across from each other in uneasy silence. Do you regret it? She asked finally. Exposing him like that. The children will find out someday. I stared into my coffee, thinking of my twins of Emma. They'll learn that their origins aren't what we thought, but they'll also learn that truth matters, that silence enables cruelty, and lies, no matter how beautiful, always collapse. That night, I watched my children sleeping peacefully, unaware of the storm that had reshaped their world. The house felt different, lighter, freer. The illusion of the perfect marriage was gone, but in its place was something real: peace. For 15 years I had lived in William's shadow. Now I was standing in my own light. I used to think revenge was about destruction, but it isn't. It's about reclamation of truth, of dignity, of self. And as the rain subsided outside my window, I whispered to myself, this is what freedom feels like. If you've ever rebuilt yourself after betrayal, or found strength in the ruins of your old life, I want you to share your story too. Like, share and subscribe, because somewhere another woman needs to hear that she's not alone.